The stars had always whispered to humanity. For 2 generations after the first contact, the whispers had become a conversation, a bustling, overwhelming, glorious noise. Earth had joined the grand network of the harmony of spheres, a coalition of ancient and advanced species. Humanity, young and eager, had built orbital docks where graceful alien vessels, like shimmering crystals or metallic birds, came to rest. They exchanged knowledge, art, and resources. The future seemed boundless. Then, the silence began. It didn't happen all at once. It started with delayed replies to long-range communications. Then, the regular trade ships from the Velen and the Predor stopped appearing on schedule. The cultural embassies on Luna grew quiet, their alien staff offering polite but increasingly vague excuses. Dr. Park Ji-hyun, a lead astrophysicist at the Geneva-based Institute for Xenological Studies, noticed it first in the data streams. The constant background hum of subspace traffic, a sound she had grown so accustomed to it, was like her own heartbeat, was fading. She stood before a large holographic display in her quiet lab, the soft blue light reflecting in her worried eyes. The graph lines, which should have been jagged with countless transmissions, were smoothing into near flatness. Her colleague, Kim Tae-min, leaned against a console, his arms crossed. He was an engineer who had helped design the translator systems used in the Harmony's networks. He preferred fixing tangible things, and the growing silence felt like a problem with no screws to tighten. Another node just went dark, Ji-hyun said, her voice calm but thin. The Cygni relay. That's the last major hub linking us to the core systems. Tae-min pushed off the console and walked over. Maybe it's maintenance. A big sector-wide upgrade they didn't tell us about. They tell us about everything, Tae-min. Or they did. She zoomed the display out to a map of local space, dotted with human and Harmony colonies. One by one, the symbols representing active communication links winked out, retreating toward Earth like a tide going out. This is intentional. We're being isolated. The official word from the few remaining Harmony liaisons came 3 days later. A gathering was called in the main assembly hall in Geneva. The alien representatives, a stern avian Silic and a graceful plant-like illusion, stood on the podium. They did not use their translators' emotive settings. Their voices were flat, cold. The Harmony of Spheres faces an existential crisis, the Silic began, its beak clicking softly. A phenomenon we term stellar fading is degrading the fundamental subspace field that powers our civilizations. Our science has determined that certain psychological and societal frequencies emitted by younger, emotionally volatile species act as a catalyst for this decay. A cold dread filled the room. Ji-hyun, sitting in the audience, felt Tae-min go rigid beside her. After careful analysis, the illusion continued, its fronds trembling slightly, it has been concluded that humanity, with your intense emotional spectrum and rapid, unpredictable technological evolution, poses an unacceptable risk. Your species' very nature is destabilizing the galactic framework. The verdict was delivered without heat. It was a clinical diagnosis. Earth was hereby placed under full quarantine. All interstellar travel to or from the Sol system was prohibited. All shared technology networks would be severed. The Harmony would enact a silent blockade. For the good of all, humanity must be left alone. Protests erupted. Diplomats pleaded. Scientists presented counter-data. But the Harmony's resolve was absolute. Within a week, the last alien ships departed from the orbital docks. They left behind the structures they had built, empty and silent. The quantum communication arrays went dark, not with a bang, but with a final, echoing click in the minds of the operators. On Earth, the shock was profound. The promise of the stars had been ripped away. They weren't being punished for something they did, but for something they were. The galaxy had looked into the human soul and found it dangerous. Chi Hyan retreated to her lab, now mostly useless. The holographic map was static, showing only the solar system. The silence was physical, a weight on her chest. Tae Min spent his days in the engineering base, staring at half-finished projects designed to interface with Harmony technology, now just expensive scrap metal. Months passed. The initial global despair hardened into a stubborn, grim resolve. EarthGov coordinated efforts to retool their economy, to become self-sufficient again using only human science. But a deep loneliness had set in, a cultural vertigo. They had seen the universe, and now the universe had turned its back. One night, Ji Hyan was running a passive scan of the deep sky, a habit she couldn't break. She was looking for anything a neutrino burst, an anomalous radio wave, a sign they weren't utterly alone. Most of her screen showed the gentle cosmic background radiation, the hiss of a dead universe. Then in a sector of space, far from any known Harmony trade route, beyond even the abandoned human colony attempts, a flicker. It was faint, a pattern buried in noise. It wasn't a Harmony signal. Their protocols were elegant, efficient. This was different. It was repetitive, desperate, and old. Very old. A distress pulse on a frequency nobody used anymore. Her breath caught. She enhanced the signal, filtering out the static. It was a simple loop, a coordinate, and a biological life sign schematic of an unknown species, flashing red against a schematic of a failing stasis chamber. Tae Min, she whispered into her comm, her voice cracking from disuse. You need to come to the lab, now. He arrived, his clothes smudged with grease from working on old fission generators. What is it? Another ghost echo? Look, she pointed to the screen, to the blinking, repeating cry for help. It's not a Harmony signal. It's from the rim, and it's a mayday. Tae Min studied the data, his engineer's mind parsing the technical readouts of the ship's failing systems. That ship design, it's primitive. Slower than light generation ship, maybe. Their power is almost gone. Life support is at 12%. He looked at her, seeing the fire back in her eyes for the first time in months. Ji Hyan, we can't. EarthGov banned any FTL attempts. The Harmony abandoned us, she said, her gaze fixed on the flickering life sign icon. They turned their back on a whole species because we were inconvenient. What do you think they did to whoever is on that ship? She stood up, pushing her chair back. They are dying, Tae Min, and they are calling out. Everyone else might be ignoring them, but we heard them. Tae Min looked from the desperate signal to Ji Hyan's determined face. He thought of the cold, logical voices of the Harmony, condemning humanity for its emotions. He thought of the silence that had swallowed their world. Then he looked back at the signal, a single fragile cry in the dark. A slow smile touched his lips, the first in a long time. The Wayfarer is still in Hangar 3. She's old, but her FTL drive still works. She'd need new navigation modules for those coordinates. And a lot of life support checks. Ji Hyan nodded, a plan solidifying in her mind. They wouldn't be breaking the quarantine for profit or power. They would be breaking it for the simplest, most human reason of all. Someone needed help. The universe had turned its back. But in a silent lab on a lonely blue planet, two humans decided they would not do the same. The silence was about to be broken, not by a shout of defiance, but by a whispered answer. The Wayfarer was not a graceful ship. She was a blocky, titanium-gray vessel from the early days of human FTL, built for hauling cargo between Mars and the asteroid belt. Her lines were pragmatic, not beautiful. To Ji Hyan and Tae Min, she was perfect. In the dim, cavernous space of Hangar 3, She looked like a promise. They worked in secret, using access codes Taemin had from his old translation grid projects. EarthGov had forbidden interstellar flight, fearing it would give the Harmony an excuse for harsher measures. But Ji Hyan argued this was different. This was a rescue. A silent, one-time mission. They told only a handful of trusted friends. Su Bin, a doctor who packed a med kit with supplies for unknown biologies, and Min Su, a former space marine turned security chief who provided them with old but functional environment suits. The Harmony said our nature is dangerous, Ji Hyan said, checking a power coupling. Her hands were smudged with grime. Let's show them what our nature really is. Tae-min was underneath the main navigation console, rewiring it. Our nature is also stubborn and a little crazy, his voice echoed back, followed by the sound of a tool clinking. But okay, let's do it. The journey to the coordinates took 2 weeks in FTL. The interior of the Wayfarer hummed with the strain of the older drive. The silence outside the ship was complete. No chatter from Harmony lanes, no beacon signals. It was the deepest dark either of them had ever known. When they dropped back into normal space, the ship was waiting. It was massive, a long seed-like structure of organic-looking metal, pitted and scarred by millennia of micro-impacts. It spun slowly, but no lights shone from its ports. The distress signal was still broadcasting, a weak electronic heartbeat. Scanning, Taemin said. His screen showed the interior layout. Atmospheric pressure is low but breathable. Power signatures are near zero. And I'm reading life signs. But they're faint. All in one central chamber. They maneuvered the Wayfarer close, using magnetic clamps to attach to the derelict's airlock. The seal hissed, a sound that seemed loud in the tomb-like quiet. In their environment suits, Ji Hyan and Tae-min stepped into the alien ship. The air was cold and still, smelling of ozone and something sweet, like decaying flowers. The walls were smooth, flowing into one another, glowing with a very faint bioluminescence that provided just enough light to see. They moved through curved corridors, their bootsteps the only sound. The ship felt ancient, not just in years, but in sorrow. The central chamber was a vast, domed space. In the center, arranged in concentric circles, were hundreds of transparent pods. Inside each one was a being. They were tall and slender, with skin that looked like polished bark and long, frond-like appendages instead of hair. Their eyes were closed. A soft, greenish light pulsed weakly in the veins of their necks. This was the source of the life signs. Ji Hyan approached a pod, wiping dust from the surface. The being inside was so still, it looked like a sculpture. Stasis, she whispered over the suit comms. But the system is failing. Power fluctuations. Tae-min had found the main control dais, a mushroom-like structure covered in strange, pulsing symbols. He connected a portable translator he had brought. The screen flickered, struggling with the ancient language. Words and images began to form. They are called the Lumin, he read, his voice filled with awe. They were a refugee species. 1,000 years ago, their home world was caught in a stellar event. The harmony of spheres offered them sanctuary on a reserve world. He scrolled further, his face falling. But the world was poor in resources. The Lumin's biology, it says here, is symbiotic with complex ecosystems. They couldn't thrive on the world given to them. They became a burden. Ji Hyan came to stand beside him, reading the tragic history. The Harmony, in its relentless pursuit of efficiency and stability, had made a decision. The Lumin were not adapting. They were using more resources than they provided. They were declared a non-viable species. Their colony was to be disbanded. The individuals moved into permanent, dreamless stasis in an archive. But these Lumin, They refused that fate, Tae Min continued. They stole this ship, an old generation vessel from their own past. They ran. They've been running, asleep for centuries, looking for a place the Harmony wouldn't bother to look. And their engines gave out here, Ji Hyon finished, looking at the silent, sleeping forms. And they sent out a call anyone could hear. But only we listened. A warning chime sounded from the dais. The translator displayed a stark message. Stasis integrity critical. Total system failure in 48 standard hours. Pods will begin terminal shutdown. They looked at each other across their helmet visors. There were hundreds of Lumin. The Wayfarer could hold maybe 20. At a stretch. We can't leave them, Ji Hyon said. Her decision made the moment she saw the first pod. We can't take them all, Tae Min replied, but he was already thinking. The Wayfarer can't, but we could wake them. All of them. And bring them home on this ship. It's a generation ship, Tae Min. Its sublight engines are dead. It can't move. Not on its own, he said, a wild idea forming. But the Wayfarer has tow cables. We could attach them, use our FTL drive to create a bubble, and tow the entire ship. It would be slow. It would burn our fuel to the last drop. But it might work. It was a mad plan. The strain could rip both ships apart. They could be stranded in the void. But the alternative was to choose which few to save and leave the rest to die. That was a Harmony choice, not a human one. We wake them up, Ji Hyon said. We tell them the situation, and we let them choose. Using the translator, they managed to initiate a gentle revival sequence for one of the Lumin, an elder whose pod markings seemed more intricate. The pod opened with a sigh of vapor. The being's fronds stirred. Large, dark eyes, like pools of still water, opened. They looked at the two strange, suited figures, but there was no fear. Only a deep, weary sadness. Ji Hyon removed her helmet, the cold air biting her cheeks. She spoke slowly, letting the translator do its work. We heard your call. We are from Earth. Your ship is dying. We have a proposal. She explained. The plan to tow their entire ship, with everyone in it, back to Earth. The risks. The chance of failure. The Lumin elder listened. It raised a long, graceful hand, and its fingertips began to glow with a soft, gold light. It touched the side of the translator. A new voice came through, gentle and musical, but firm. You would risk your own lives for strangers you do not know? Your leaders have permitted this? Ji Hyon smiled, a small, sad smile. Our leaders don't know. The galaxy has turned its back on us, too. They said we were too emotional, too chaotic. Maybe they were right. Because we can't turn our back on you? The Lumin elder was silent for a long moment. Then the gold light pulsed brighter. Your chaos feels like warmth in a cold universe. We have been asleep so long. We choose to go with you. We choose to hope. Working fast, Tae Min and Ji Hyon, with instructions from the now awake Lumin elders, stabilized the failing systems just enough. They deployed the Wayfarer's heavy tow cables, attaching them to the structural ribs of the generation ship. The process took hours, each clang of metal on metal echoing in the silent space. Finally, they were ready. The Lumin were awake now, moving quietly through their ship, tending to each other. Their bioluminescent patterns created a soft, shifting light in the cavernous chamber. Back in the Wayfarer's cockpit, Tae Min initiated the FTL drive. It groaned in protest, the stress indicators flashing orange. The bubble of warped space had to extend to envelop the massive Lumin ship. Alarms beeped. Here we go, Tae Min muttered, pushing the controls forward. With a lurch that shook both vessels, the FTL field engaged. The stars outside blurred. They were moving impossibly, dragging a 1,000-year-old refugee ship and its gentle passengers toward a blue world that had itself been cast aside. They were not just bringing back new life. They were bringing back a mirror, and in it, humanity would see its own reflection, not as a danger, but as a sanctuary. The sight that greeted the orbital defenses of Earth was one they could not have imagined. The familiar, blocky shape of the Wayfarer emerged from FTL, trailing not debris, but an entire massive alien vessel. It was like a tiny bird towing a sleeping whale. Panic and alarm flared across EarthGov channels. Unauthorized FTL activity. An unidentified craft. The military went to high alert dot inside the Wayfarer. Ji Hyan's comms crackled with angry voices demanding explanations. She took a deep breath, her hands steady on the console. This is Dr. Park Ji Hyan of the Wayfarer. We are not hostile. We have rescued a refugee species, the Lumin. Their ship was dying. They have no home. We request permission to land and request sanctuary for them. The silence from EarthGov was long and heavy. Then a stern voice replied, "You have violated a direct quarantine order, Doctor. Stand by for escort. Do not attempt to land the alien vessel." Tae Min, monitoring the strain on the engines, shook his head. "We can't just park this thing in orbit. Their life support is on its last legs. They need a planet now." On the surface, in a secure EarthGov command center, Minister Lee, a man whose job had shifted from interstellar diplomacy to managing despair, watched the screens. His advisors argued loudly. Some saw the Lumin as a potential threat, a disease vector, a provocation to the harmony. Others, like Dr. Kong Soo-bin, who had been secretly briefed by Ji Hyan weeks before, pleaded for compassion. They are refugees. Soo-bin said, her voice clear and firm, even over the comms from her medical lab. They are a peaceful species, abandoned by the same people who abandoned us. If we turn them away, we become the harmony. Minister Lee looked at the alien ship, a strange, beautiful, broken thing. He thought of the silence. He thought of what humanity was becoming in its isolation, fearful, suspicious, shrinking. Finally, he spoke. Guide them to the old biodome complex in Jeju, the large one near the coast. It is isolated. We can contain the situation there. For now. It was not a welcome, but it was a chance. The landing was a delicate, terrifying operation. Tae Min, with the help of a few Lumin who understood their ship's failing systems, managed a controlled crash landing in the designated area. The great seed ship settled into the soft earth of Jeju, island with a groan that shook the windows of nearby villages. The first Lumin to step onto Earth was the Elder, who had given his name as Aelin. He stood at the base of his ship's ramp, his fronds trembling slightly in the Earth's breeze. The air was full of smells, salt, soil, green things, a riot of sensation after centuries of sterile, recycled ship air. His dark eyes took in the sky, the clouds, the distant sea. He did not speak, but the patterns on his skin swirled with a soft, gold light. Soo-bin was there with her medical team, dressed in simple hazard suits. She approached slowly, her hands open. "Welcome," she said, her translator hanging from her neck. "I am Dr. Kong Soo-bin. We will help you." The Lumin were gentle and quiet. They moved with a slow grace, and they did not speak with sound. They communicated through touch and the shifting colored light on their skin. They were weak from long stasis, and many needed medical care. Soo-bin and her team worked day and night, learning as they went. The Lumin biology was plant-like. They photosynthesized weekly, but also drew nutrients from complex organic compounds in soil. They were not built for the sterile, metal environments the harmony favored. EarthGov watched, sensors trained on the Jeju biodome, expecting problems. What they saw instead was something miraculous dot where the Lumin walked. The grass grew thicker and greener. Flowers that had been wilting near the old dome bloomed with sudden vibrant color. A small polluted stream that ran through the area began to clear, the water becoming pure within days. The Lumin, simply by existing, seemed to harmonize and heal the ecosystem around them. Te-Min, studying the sensor data with Ji Hyan, was the first to understand. "It's not magic," he said, pointing to the readings. "It's a biological exchange. They emit a subtle field, a combination of gentle pheromones and bioenergy. It stimulates plant growth, breaks down toxins, balances microbial life. This is what they meant by being symbiotic. They need a rich, living world to thrive, and in return, they make it richer." Ji Hyan looked out the window of the observation post at the Jiu site. The area around the Lumin ship was already a lush paradise, a stark contrast to the controlled, concrete-heavy human settlements. "The Harmony saw this as a burden," she whispered. "They needed too many resources. But they weren't taking. They were trying to give. The Harmony just didn't know how to receive it." News of the healing aliens spread, despite EarthGov's attempts to control it. People were fascinated. Images of the gentle, glowing Lumin tending to gardens that sprang up overnight were broadcast across the planet. In a world shadowed by rejection, the Lumin represented something pure, a connection to life itself. But not everyone was happy. Factions that wanted humanity to focus solely on its own survival, to avoid any further attention from the Harmony, protested. They gathered outside the Jiju perimeter with signs that read "Earth First" and "Nitrogen Monoxide Alien Risks." The fear was real, and it was loud. Inside the dome, Elin sat with Su Bin and Ji Hyan. He touched the soil of a potted plant, and its leaves perked up visibly. His translator emitted his gentle voice. "We feel the fear of your people. We do not wish to bring conflict. We have known enough of it." "You haven't brought conflict," Su Bin said gently. "You've brought proof. Proof that the Harmony was wrong." Te-Min burst into the room, a data pad in his hand. His face was pale. "I've been analyzing the energy signature of the stellar fading, the one the Harmony blamed us for. And I've been analyzing the Lumin's biofield." He looked at them, his eyes wide. "They're opposites. The fading is a decay, a slow entropy in the subspace field. The Lumin energy, it's a gentle reinforcement. It's like a regenerative pulse. It's small, but it's the same frequency, just inverted." The room was silent. Ji Hyan understood first. "You mean the Lumin could stop the fading? They could fix the galaxy's energy crisis?" "Not alone," Te-Min said quickly. "Their field is weak, planetary at best. But the principle, if it could be understood, amplified. The Harmony never tried. They saw species that didn't fit their machines, so they threw them away. They threw away the solution." At that moment, an alarm blared across the EarthGov network. Minister Li's face appeared on every screen, grim and tense. "We have just detected a Harmony vessel," he announced. "It has entered the solar system. It is on a direct approach for Earth. They are demanding the immediate and unconditional surrender of the COIs, contraband biologicals." The universe, it seemed, had not finished turning its back. It had now come to take what little light humanity had found. The Lumin looked at their human friends, their light dimming with sorrow. They had come for sanctuary and had brought a storm instead. Ji Hyan stood up. She looked at Elin, at Su Bin, at Te-Min. The fear was there, cold in her stomach, but beneath it was a fierce, protective warmth. They had embraced these strangers. They would not let them go. "Tell the Harmony," she said, her voice not loud but carrying a steel that Minister Li heard through the comm, "that they can have their meeting. but they will not have our guests. The Harmony ship hung in orbit, a sleek blade of dark metal against the backdrop of the moon. It did not look like a vessel of peace. It was a statement of power and precision. On Earth, the air was thick with tension. The protesters outside Jeju had fallen silent, their anger replaced by a cold global fear. The blockade they had lived under was one thing. A direct confrontation was another. In Geneva, the old Interstellar Assembly Hall, which had been silent for so long, was prepared for a single guest. The human delegation was small. Minister Lee, his face a mask of diplomatic calm. Kim Tai-min, there as a technical advisor. And Park Ji-hyan, who had refused to be left out. They waited at the long, polished table. The seat for the Harmony envoy was empty. The doors opened silently. The envoy entered. It was the same avian Silic from the announcement of the quarantine, its feathers a perfect, iridescent black, its movements efficient and devoid of waste. It did not sit. It stood at the end of the table, its large, dark eyes taking in the humans. "I am Envoy Kach," it said, its translated voice clipped. "You have possession of Lumin refugees. They are property of the Harmony, designated for archival. Their unauthorized reactivation and relocation constitute a theft of resources and a breach of galactic stability protocols. You will transfer them to our custody immediately." Minister Lee began the prepared speech about humanitarian principles, but Ji-hyan cut him off. She was tired of speeches. "They are not property," she said, her voice clear in the vast room. "They are people, and they asked for our help." The Silic's head tilted, a gesture of cold curiosity. "Your emotional bias is noted, Dr. Park. It is the very bias that necessitated your quarantine. The Lumin are a non-viable species. Their biological processes are resource-intensive and inefficient. Preserving them serves no logical purpose. Hand them over, and the consequences of your FTL violation will be reconsidered." Tae-min leaned forward. "You call them inefficient because you only measure one kind of efficiency." He pushed a data pad across the table. It showed the readings from Jeju, the purified water, the accelerated plant growth, the unique energy signature. They create balance. They heal ecosystems. You gave them a dead world and called them failures. You never tried to understand what they actually do. KTH glanced at the data, unmoved. Biological novelties. Insignificant on a galactic scale. The stellar fading is a crisis of physics, not gardening. "It is a crisis of connection," Ji-hyan said. She stood up, walking to a window that looked out over a green Earth landscape. "You turned your back on the Lumin because they were difficult. You turned your back on us because we were loud, because we felt too much. But what if your silence is the problem? What if the fading is happening because the galaxy has been cut into pieces, with every species isolated, useful only if it fits perfectly into your machine?" Her words hung in the air. The Silic envoy was silent for a long moment. "A poetic theory. Without evidence, it is noise. You have 24 hours to comply. If the Lumin are not delivered to orbit, a permanent, impenetrable blockade will be established around your star system. You will truly be alone forever." The envoy turned and left, its footsteps echoing. The ultimatum was clear. The news spread across Earth. 24 hours. In Jeju, Dr. Kang Soo-bin stood with Elin and other Lumin elders, watching the human news broadcasts. The fear was palpable. Elin's light pulsed slowly, a soft blue of sorrow. "We will go," he communicated through the translator. "We cannot be the cause of your extinction." Soo-bin shook her head firmly. "No, if you go, they will put you back to sleep forever. You heard Ji-hyan. You are not a problem to be solved. You are a key." But we need to show them, not with data on a screen, with something they can see. An idea began to form, born of desperation and hope. She spoke to the Lumine elders, and their light began to shift from blue to a thoughtful, shimmering gold. Across the planet, a different message began to spread, not from the government, but from the people. It started in Jeju, with the local farmers who had seen their lands flourish. It spread to biologists, to ecologists, to ordinary people tired of living in fear. The call was simple: share the light. The plan was audacious. The Lumine's biofield was strongest where they were welcomed, where a connection was made. What if they weren't kept in one dome? What if they were welcomed into communities all over the world? In the remaining hours, a global movement organized through old, resilient internet networks sprang to life. Volunteers offered homes, greenhouses, community centers. Transport craft, old and new, were mobilized not by EarthGov, but by civilians. Minister Lee, watching the reports flood in, was about to order it stopped. But he saw the faces on the screens, not angry mobs, but people planting gardens, preparing rooms, looking up with a determined hope he hadn't seen in years. He gave a silent, weary order to stand down. Let it happen. As dawn broke on the deadline, the first Lumine left Jeju, not on a ship to orbit, but on ground vehicles and short-hop flyers. Elin went to a community garden in Oslo. Another elder went to a reforestation project in the Amazon. Families were hosted in Tokyo, in Nairobi, in small towns in the countryside. Everywhere they went, humans met them not with weapons, but with open hands and open hearts. And something began to happen. In Oslo, the winter-barren garden plots, touched by Elin's presence, showed green shoots in a matter of hours. In the Amazon, damaged areas of the forest seemed to breathe easier, the air clearing. But it was more than just plants. A sense of calm, a fragile but palpable wave of harmony, seemed to emanate from each point where humans and Lumine connected. Tae-min and Ji-hyun, back in the Geneva Command Center, watched the global sensor network. Tiny, glowing points of stability appeared on the map, not the cold, hard stability of the harmony, but a warm, living, interconnected web. And the combined, amplified biofield began to register on instruments designed to track subspace. It was a gentle wave, a resonant frequency of life itself, pushing back against the silence. The 24 hours were up. The Harmony ship in orbit activated its primary engines. A threat. A final demand came. On the roof of the Geneva Hall, Ji-hyun and Tae-min stood with a simple broadcast unit. They did not broadcast a surrender or a defiance. They broadcast a live feed. They showed Elin in Oslo, a human child carefully placing her hand near his glowing fronds. They showed a Lumine helping an old farmer in Kenya. They showed the networks of light on the global map. And Ji-hyun spoke directly to the camera and to the ship above. You gave us an ultimatum. You told us to hand over the Lumine or be alone forever. But we are not alone. We are connected to them and to each other in a way you abandoned long ago. You measure the universe in efficiency and silence. We are embracing it with chaos and connection. And it is working. Look at our world. Feel the energy we are creating together. You can try to blockade this light, but you cannot extinguish it. The universe turned its back, but we chose to embrace. You can still join us. In orbit, Envoy K-Thief watched the broadcast. It watched the data stream from its own sensors, detecting the nascent, planet-wide harmonic field. It was illogical. It was inefficient. It was chaotic. And it was, according to every scan, beginning to gently reinforce the local subspace field, counteracting the fade. For the first time, the Silic's certainty wavered. The human's words were not just noise. They were an answer, a different answer, shining up from the blue planet below. The envoy had orders to take the Lumin. It had no orders for what to do when an entire planet became a sanctuary. The silence from the Harmony ship stretched for an hour, then 2. On Earth, the world held its breath. In Geneva, Ji Hyan and Tae Min waited, the live feed still quietly showing images from across the planet. A Lumin sharing a meal with a family in Seoul. A joint human-Lumin team planting trees in the Canadian North. The web of connection was fragile, but it was real. In orbit. Envoy Kate H. stood on the command deck of the sleep vessel, analyzing the data. The scientific part of its mind, trained for millennia in harmony logic, could not dismiss the readings. The gentle, planet-wide biofield generated by the Lumin-human symbiosis was having a measurable effect. It was a stabilizing resonance, a counterfrequency to the stellar fade. It was small, yes, contained to one planet, but the principle was undeniable. The Harmony had searched for a grand, technological solution to the fading. They had never considered a billion small living ones. Katie thought of the Lumin, archived as non-viable. It thought of humanity, quarantined as chaotic. 2 flawed pieces discarded. And yet, together, they were creating a whole new kind of stability. It was the most illogical, elegant thing the envoy had ever witnessed. On the surface, a new signal arrived, not from the Harmony ship, but from the Jeju site. It was Dr. Kang Subin. "Envoy Cage," she said, her voice calm and clear. "We invite you to land, to see for yourself. No weapons, no guards, just the truth." It was a risk, a huge risk. But Minister Lee, after a long look at Ji Hyan's determined face, authorized it. "If we believe in what we're saying," he said, sounding tired but firm, "we have to believe it can be seen." The Harmony shuttle descended, a silent silver dart. It landed not at a military or government complex, but in a field near the original Jeju biodome, now the heart of a lush, green paradise that had grown in a matter of weeks. The air was sweet and full of the sound of insects and birds. Envoy Cage stepped out, alone. Its avian eyes took in the scene. Humans and Lumin worked side by side, tending to plants. A human child laughed, chasing a floating seed pod released by a young Lumin. The light here was different, softer, warmer. The envoy could feel it on its feathers, a subtle vibration that seemed to quiet the constant, low-level anxiety that was the background noise of the fading galaxy. Elin, the Lumin elder, and Subin walked forward to meet it. Elin's fronds glowed with a peaceful gold light. "Welcome," Subin said. "Will you walk with us?" They walked through the gardens. KTH saw the science, the accelerated growth, the purified water samples in testing stations. But it also saw the other things, the things its people had long ago dismissed as irrelevant. It saw a human man patiently helping a Lumin learn to touch the soil, their mutual confusion turning to shared understanding. It saw the lack of fear. "You declared us flawed," Elin communicated, his translator voicing the gentle words. "You were not wrong. Alone, we are incomplete. We need a thriving world. Alone, humans can be chaotic. They need a purpose beyond themselves. Together, we create a balance. We make each other whole." Kate stopped, looking at a fountain where water cascaded over stones, clean and bright. "The stellar fading is a cosmological event," it stated, but the certainty was gone from its voice. "It is a sickness of disconnection," Ji Hyan said, walking up to join them. She had come down from Geneva. "You built a perfect, silent machine of a civilization. But you cut out all the parts that didn't fit, that made noise, that needed care. You removed the heart. And now the body is dying." Tae Min arrived, holding a small scanner. He showed the envoy the readings, the real-time data of the local subspace field. Around Jeju, and faintly echoing from every other site where humans and Lumine connected, the fading was not just halted, it was very, very slightly reversing. "It's not power," Tae-min said. "It's harmony. Real harmony. Not a name, but a feeling." The avian envoy was silent for a long time, watching a Lumine gently place its glowing hands on the trunk of a young, damaged tree. The tree's leaves, which had been brown at the edges, seemed to green as they watched. KTH had been an envoy for a century. It had delivered verdicts, enforced decrees. It had never once delivered hope. It turned to Minister Lee, who had just arrived. "The harmony will not change its policies quickly," H said, its voice different now, less clipped. "The fear of the fade is too great. The belief in silent order is too deep. We're not asking you to change your policies," Ji Hyan said. "We're showing you a different way. You can keep your blockade around us, if you wish. We will stay here, in our sanctuary. We will take in any other species you have cast aside. We will build a different kind of galaxy, right here. One built on embrace, not on turning away." The idea was staggering in its simplicity. Earth would not fight its way back into the harmony. It would become something else entirely. A beacon. Kate looked up at the sky, then back at the thriving, noisy, vibrant life around it. It made a decision. It was a small one, a personal one, against all its orders. It opened a communication channel to its ship in orbit. "Stand down all aggressive protocols," it said. "Initiate a full sensor scan of the planet's new biofield. Record everything. This is data the Harmony must see." Then it did something no Silic envoy had ever done on an inferior world. It removed the small ceremonial medallion of its office, a symbol of Harmony authority. It held it in its talon for a moment, then placed it on a nearby stone bench. It was just a gesture, but its meaning was clear. "I will return to the Harmony Council," Cake said. "I will show them the data. I will tell them what I have seen. It may change nothing, but I must try." As the envoy shuttle lifted off, the sun was setting over Jeju, painting the sky in colors of orange and purple. The humans and Lumine stood together, watching it go. They did not know if it would bring peace or a greater storm. But they knew what they had built was true. In the months that followed, the silent blockade remained, but the fear lifted. Earth embraced its new identity. They called themselves Sanctuary. Word, somehow, began to seep through the cracks of the galaxy. Faint, desperate signals from other discarded species. A water-bound people whose world had been drained. A fragile crystalline race, declared too delicate, began to arrive, not on official channels, but on the old. Chaotic frequencies humans still listened to, and Earth answered. Each time, the Wayfarer flew again, and again, each time with a human and Lumine crew. They were not conquerors or diplomats. They were gardeners of souls, rescuing the broken pieces the Harmony had thrown away and helping them find a home. On a hill in Jeju, now a forest of incredible beauty, a monument was built. It was not of metal or stone, but a living tree, planted by human and Lumine hands together. At its base, a simple plaque read, in both languages, "The universe turned its back, but we chose to embrace Dot, and in that embrace, we found ourselves." They were no longer just humans. They were no longer just Lumine. They were the proof that a different way was possible. The galaxy was vast and cold, and the fading was not yet over. But on one small blue-green world, a warm light was shining, growing stronger every day, a quiet answer to the great, silent dark.